Governor Perry. Again, thank you for joining us. All right, so let's talk about South Carolina. How are you doing here? What is the kind of response that you're getting?
Well, it's great. Hospitality is just fabulous, and we've enjoyed getting to know the people of South Carolina and going to the different communities. Has been. We were in Georgetown day before yesterday, one of the most beautiful cities, third oldest city in South Carolina. So the history that you get to learn as you go to these states and the people, and you know, if there wasn't South Carolina, there wouldn't be a Texas. So that whole little connection between William Barrett Travis and James Butler Bonham, who were from Saluda County, South Carolina. So just some great stories and history that you get to share with people. So the short answer is we've had a wonderful time. Anita and I have, Anita's probably been here more than I have over the course of the campaign. She's come and made lots of stops, and she was in Georgetown back, I don't know, a couple of months ago. And every time I go somewhere, they just go, "We love your wife." So, you know, it's kind of like...
They may not be so sure about him,
yeah,
but they're not the
that's
wife.
the deal. That's the deal. I told him, I said, you know, my wife, my son, and then maybe me is kind of the way it's been. Griffin has been on the stage of, I can't tell you how many times, as a surrogate speaker with Rick Santorum, back when y'all were on the B team, as I would say, and now Rick's back up at the top of the list as well. So, but we've had a wonderful time. It's this whole process. It's stressful. It can be rough and tumble. But look, we're asking for your support for the most important job in the world. This is a job interview, and you need to know everything there is to know about us. I mean, you know, whether it's you know, what we did 30 years ago or what we've done over the last 11 years as the governor of the 13th largest economy in the world. You need to know about what my vision is for this country, and as you do all the other individuals that are standing up and say, I want to give you a vision to make you feel better about the future of this country and why our children and our grandchildren are going to have a better life than what we have. And I know if you're like my wife, she's got great concerns about the future of this country.
But you talk about this being a job interview. You've got the super PACs, you've got the negative ads, you've got debate after debate. It's all rough and tumble. You can't feel the same way about the political process now as you did 6 months ago when you got involved. Is this process really working when you've got more negativity than we've ever had?
Where you been when we ran our races in Texas?
So you're saying Texas is worse than America?
I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that politics is rough and tumble. I mean, you go back 150 years ago and look and see the ads that were running, what have you. I mean, it's tough business. I mean, there are people that say things that you know, they might wish they hadn't said, and you can reel them back in and what have you. But I mean, this is rough and tumble work. The world's a dangerous place. We need a tough individual who has a very powerful core that knows what they believe in, that is willing to go stand up face to face with the leader of China or the leader of Russia, or for that matter, that madman that's in Iran, and say, here is what the United States is going to do, not equivocate, not have them. I want our allies to be very, very comfortable that America is going to be standing with them, and I want our enemies very nervous.
Yes.
These are moms here, and in some cases grandmoms here, and in 3 cases great-grandmothers. Are you prepared to look them straight in the eye and say to them that you might send their children into battle over Iran? It's their children.
As an individual who has worn the uniform, as a matter of fact, I'm the only person on that stage who volunteered to serve our country. And for the last 11 years, I've been the commander-in-chief. For the last 11 years, I've been the commander-in-chief of over 20,000 National Guard troops that I've seen deployed multiple times into theaters. The absolute last thing that I want to do as your commander-in-chief, as the next commander-in-chief, is put our most precious resources at risk. And we will use every tool that we've got. It's one of the reasons I'm really concerned about this administration and their lukewarm approach to what's going on in the Middle East. Whether it's, oh, we want to negotiate rather than using every tool in '09. And when I talk about every tool, I'm talking about civic, overt, covert sanctions. We should have been sanctioning the Iranian central bank years ago, frankly, rather than, and we're not even sanctioning them now with the power of which we could be sanctioning them. Bring them to their knees if that's what's required. But at that point in time where America's interest is truly impacted, and the only way that we have to protect American interest at that particular point in time, if military force is needed, then it will be used. But let me share with you this. Again, having worn that uniform and having great knowledge about our power and our ability, we will go strike. We will go strike hard. We will use everything. Forget about political correctness from my standpoint. It's about winning, and it's about bringing our troops home then as soon as we can.
I'd like to get back to something now that you mentioned a few minutes ago, candidates saying things that they later regret. A few days ago you used the term vulture capitalism to refer to Mitt Romney, and the media really picked up on that, and it upset some Republicans. I'm wondering now if you feel like you might have gone too far using that term, if you regret saying it, or if you still stand by your words.
Well, actually, it's a term that's been used before. Matter of fact, Mitt's campaign consultant, Stuart Stevens, used it in a campaign against Meg Whitman. But the fact is this: I'm about creating jobs. And my record on job creation as the governor of the 13th largest economy in the world is pretty impeccable. 1 million jobs been created in Texas because we've helped create a climate in that state where people know that they can risk their capital, they know they can have a return on their investment, they get to keep more of what they work for, and that's what the President of the United States needs to be focused on. And again, this is a job interview, and you need to know everything about us. And you know, you need to know what my tax returns look like. And that's an issue that my taxes, I've laid out, Anita and I, we put our taxes out every year since back in the 80s. And every candidate up there, they should put their taxes out, including Mitt. You know, September and October is not the time for us to be finding out that, oops, there's something out there that is a problem. We need to know it now. So as I talked about Georgetown, as I talked about what happened with that steel mill, I think that's fair for us to say, is that the right type of mentality that American people want to see in the leader of this country, that you know, swoop in, they put a lot of debt on the country, they strip it of its assets, and a lot of people lost their job. That was the point I was making with that. But the bigger issue is Americans have lost confidence in Washington, and they've lost confidence in Wall Street. We have seen this huge transfer of wealth from Main Street to Wall Street bankers, and Congress was the facilitators in that. And they want a president, you want a president that has a record that has been vetted, and a record of job creation, and that has a vision for our children, so that my son knows that he's going to be able to go risk capital and have a chance to have it. And that's tax policy at the federal level. It's the reason that I put a 20% flat tax concept out there. It's the reason that I want to pull back every regulation that's been put in place since '08. Test it. Does it kill jobs or create jobs? And have that philosophy instilled into this country, and do it every day, and not just talk about it. I mean, people are so fed up with folks that just talk about we're going to do X and we're going to do Y, and then they go to Washington, D.C. and nothing changes. My question's this: do you think if we change a Democrat insider with a Republican insider, we're going to get a big change in Washington, D.C.? I'll suggest to you, I am the outsider who will go to Washington, D.C. with an 11-year record of making a difference in a big, big economy, and do it in Washington, D.C. And our children and our grandchildren will be better off for it.
I believe that we have a mom now who's waiting to ask you a question.
Hi, Mom.
Hi. Our children will be the future Americans, and their education is a very important thing for us.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just need to know, what role do you think the office of the President of the United States of America should play in Americans' educational policies?
Great question from this. I mean, Nita and I, our two children, Griffin and Sydney, they're out of college now, but they were public school children all the way through in a little town of Haskell, where we started our lives together, right up through. One of them went to a private college, and one of them went to a public institution. And their education, we paid a lot of attention to. Nita was on the school board in Haskell, so we really have this love affair with, in our case, public schools, and how those public schools impacted our children's ability to be prepared to be successful adults. Here's what I don't like. Here's what I don't agree with. That Washington, D.C. should be making education policy decisions back in the states. I would do away with the Department of Education. And let me... And let me share with you why. Because I think that governors, legislatures, the school boards, the administrators, the parents, the teachers in the states have a substantially better idea how to educate and have the better concepts. One size fits all, even with waivers and all the things that they will tell you that they do in Washington. You know, I was not in favor of No Child Left Behind. I was certainly not in favor of Race to the Top, where they wanted to install national standards and national tests. Leave education to our children, to the states, and I will guarantee you, not only will we get more money into the classroom, where the dollars need to be spent, but decisions will be made that are in our children's best interest. So doing away with the Department of Education would be a rather simple and I think a rather wise thing for us to do in this country.
Now, so often, before you go to a question, so often we talk about the role of mom in helping to educate her children. What's the role of dad in helping to educate their children?
Well, I don't think it's any different, frankly. I think they ought to be there ought to be a partnership there. I mean, it's the reason that the policies that we should put in place in this country should be where people get to keep more of their money, where moms are not in some cases kind of forced to have to go work, or dads are forced to have to go work 2 jobs to be able to pay for the cost of living in this country, and we can do that. But government is just gotten so big. Government uses up so much of our money, and I think this is more of an economic issue than it is a whose role is it to play in the education process, because we're pulled farther and farther away from our families because we're required to work longer and longer and longer to pay the cost of government. So my whole issue, when I came to Charlotte, came to Charleston in August and announced for the presidency, one of the things I said that really resonated with people is it was my goal to make Washington as inconsequential in your lives as I can, and particularly on the tax burden side, so that parents at that particular point in time, they have more time to spend with their children in the pursuit of the children's education.
All right, let's take another question.
Although I am not a mom, she is in the room, but my parents and I are both small Amway business owners, and it seems that we are one generation away from losing that freedom and that opportunity that we have today. What will you do as president to keep entrepreneurship alive in this country? You
know, Ronald Reagan, I think one of Ronald Reagan's quotes that I love the best is that freedom and the loss of freedom is only one generation away. And that is our responsibility as Americans. And to me, freedom comes in a lot of different descriptions. There's economic freedom. There's obviously our freedoms that the Constitution talked about. But the economic freedom is really pretty simple. It's about tax policy. It's about regulations. It's about a legal system. And I'm really proud of what we've done in my home state. I tell people, you want to know how a person is going to perform in the future? Look at their past. It's a very good indicator. And in 2003, we passed the most sweeping tort reform in the nation that protected our doctors and our medical professionals and hospitals from frivolous lawsuits. And Texas now has more than 20,000 physicians that are practicing medicine in Texas. And it was an access to good health care in our state dealing with that issue. But we also have kept the tax policy as light on the job creators as we can, and a regulatory climate that is fair and predictable. There is a reason that on the average 1,300 people a day move into the state of Texas, and it's not because we got great weather in August. It's because there's still the perception and the reality that there's a land of opportunity in this country, and it happened because, not because government created jobs, but because government created an environment where entrepreneurs felt comfortable they could risk their capital and have a return on their investment. And that is what America needs. A president that every day gets up and understands that their most important job is, other than making sure that America is protected from those that would do harm to this country, is to have those economic freedoms protected and expanded tax-wise. And again, 20% flat tax, and go to rickperry.org if you want to see the whole plan. I mean, just so we don't burn up the time here talking about it. And the regulatory side, and obviously some legal reforms as well. We can listen, our best days are ahead of us in this country. There is no reason in the world for us to be pessimistic about the future, but we got to change presidents, and we've got to change Washington.
Hi, I'm Sally Updegraff from Savannah Lakes, McCormick, South Carolina. And I would like to know, as a mother and a grandmother, what will you do to make America a place where they will want to live and also thrive?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go over my economic policy again because I think you all understand that that's really what I'm such a believer in the free enterprise system and capitalism and again, getting that confidence back that Washington and Wall Street, that there's not, I mean, what happened over the last 2 years when you had TARP and $800 billion worth of our Main Street money basically that went over to bail out businesses that were too big to fail. You know, my policy is if you're too big to fail, you might be too big. And then the president came in with stimulus, and we've been in this experiment of Keynesian politics. If you can just spend enough money, the economy will turn around. I got to ask you, are you better off today than you were $4 trillion ago?
No. Is anyone?
Yeah. No. So, I mean, getting this country back to have confidence that the men and women in Washington, D.C. really understand what's going on in your life. And that's why I've called for this part-time Congress. I happen to think it makes ultimate good sense, as our founding fathers did, that members of Congress, it shouldn't be a full-time job. They should go into Washington for a set period of time. They need to work and get the work done. I'd even consider doing budgeting on 2-year cycles and have a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution where you can't spend more money than what you have coming in, but have those members live back in the districts, have a real job like everybody else does, and live under the laws that they pass. That's what we do in Texas, and it works really well. 140 days every other year is all our legislature meets. We pay them $600 a month. They get their work done, and then they get back home to take care of their real job.
Before we go on, it is a privilege to introduce your better half,
yes, sir,
and to have her come up here. Please welcome Anita Perry.
Okay.
Actually, this is done because this guy wants to get on television. So everyone asks, And he wants a workers' comp filing.
Yeah.
Everyone asks what life would be like, how their spouse has added to them. Governor, could you tell me how your life would have been different if Anita had not been your wife?
Well, what you have to understand is she's the first girl I ever had a date with. And
You met in elementary school, right?
We did.
actually, I lived out in the country and she lived in town. And her dad was a family practitioner, and he was actually my physician. And so I knew who she was, but 16 years we dated. So, yeah, she was a hard sell. Yeah. I tell you, she thought I was pretty cool when I was a pilot in the Air Force. And then when I came back home and started farming again, I lost a lot of cool. And so it took me another 5 years to begging and pleading and whining. And, but anyway, you know, I can't imagine my life without her.
What does she add to you? What do you talk about policy? Do you talk about the challenges that you face?
Oh, sure, yeah. And she's got incredible instincts. She has that proverbial sixth sense about people and about issues. You know, when I foul up, which I do on a more regular basis than I would like to admit, she's always there to share with me how I could have done it different, and if I had asked her first, it wouldn't have happened. So, but we've got we truly do have a partnership from the standpoint of I mean, she's done this. I mean, she's run for office. I mean, she ran for office for the school board against 5 other people and won without a runoff. So, I mean, she's been in the arena and she understands the trials and tribulations. She knows the scrutiny that the children have and that we have, and so I consider her to be, you know, she's my best friend. She's a person. I mean, if I just had to walk away from all of this, if she was walking with me, it'd all be okay.
I'm curious, because of all of the media portrayals of your husband that I'm sure you're watching and reading every day, what do you think is out there that's inaccurate regarding your husband
we don't have that much time.
that you would like to clear up? Because I know it's hard for you to sit silently by and watch all of these things being said about him.
Well, actually, I don't. You know, I've almost stopped reading on the internet, you know, and I'm watching the news. You know, you can't do that. And, you know, it doesn't just happen to us, but it happens to all the candidates. Yeah. So it's really, really unfair because, you know, he's smart, intelligent, he's a leader. He's set this economy for, you know, this climate in Texas to create jobs. And so I'm very proud of him. You know, we put ourselves out here as every candidate does. And you expect to be, you know, every level be scrutinized, and that's what we've had. So I don't. And right now it's particularly hard, you know, the closer that we get to the Saturday.
One more. Is it you? Because I watched you both grabbed each other when you sat down. Is it you who grabs his hand? Or is it you who grabs her hand?
Depends on the issue. You know, if there's a big bump on the airplane, it's her grabbing me. If it's something to do with health care, it's me grabbing her. I mean, we kind of have our, you know, I know what she's a professional at, and she knows what I'm a professional at. So.
Let's take another question.
Good morning, Governor Perry and Mrs. Perry. Thank you for being here. And also Texas and South Carolina have another connection because your alma mater is in the SEC now.
Right.
So we'll be playing Texas A&M.
Yeah.
But my concern as a mother and a grandmother is the curriculum / liberal indoctrination that our children are subjected to in school. And I know Texas has a big influence on what goes into textbooks, and I don't think it's the textbooks, but what is your vision for education?
Right.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to?
No, Chesky.
Okay. I go back to my argument that those issues should be decided at the state level, and if there are, and we have big fights in Texas over content of textbooks. I mean, it's just a big back and forth, and we elect our school, or excuse me, our state board of education is elected, and so actually the challenge is for you as the citizens of your state to be actively engaged with that. And I know each state has maybe some different ways of setting up that Board of Education or whatever it might be called, but it's your responsibility to be engaged in the public arena so that your values are reflected in what those textbooks are going to have in them. Because in our state Board of Education actively is engaged in the content, and so you know, I put it on you. I mean, if we're going to be a country of we the people, and hopefully, you know, the Tea Party and the conservatives really understand that our country is in jeopardy, and the way of life in this country is in jeopardy, not just economically, but you know, I will tell you, when I see the Department of Justice, this administration's Department of Justice, coming into South Carolina and suing to stop this state's immigration law that it passed, suing to stop a voter identification bill that you passed, and then the National Labor Relations Board coming in and trying to leverage Boeing to not come into this state unless the unions had their way. That, in my opinion, is irresponsible activity out of Washington, D.C. into a state sovereign right to decide.
Mrs. Perry, we have a CafeMom member online who had a question just for you.
Great, good.
She asks, of all of the disagreements you've had throughout your marriage, which one sticks out most in your mind?
Oh my gosh.
I'm glad I didn't ask that.
I know. The one that sticks out most in my mind, gosh, that's
We didn't have that many.
yeah.
We really don't. I mean,
Who apologizes first?
Oh, he does. He does.
she does.
You know, there is no really great tumultuous decision or argument that we had. You
No
know,
thermostat wars, nothing like that?
No, nothing like that. So, you
Life
know,
is too short to be.
I know, and the older that you
squabbling
get,
about that.
I think you realize that life
And we
is
dated
shorter.
for 16 years. I mean, it wasn't like I didn't know her pretty well. And she knew me pretty well. So, I mean, and we've been married for 29 years. You know, I mean, like 45 years I've known her. And so, you know, I mean, even things like, I'm not interested in watching that on the TV. It's kind of like, okay, me neither. You know, it's just, you know, I love her and she loves me, and we really don't have we just don't have those kind of arguments. I mean, I tell people on a regular basis how blessed I am to be married to her. I mean, I know there's some folks who have these knockdown drag-outs, and we just don't.
Now, you said the word blessed, and I know how religion is very important in your life, and I'll say this to you publicly. You and I have run into each other in the campaign trail, and she says, I pray for you, and I believe her.
Yes.
And it's a very special thing for me when you say that.
Yeah.
What does prayer and what does faith mean for both of you in your life?
I don't think you can get through this without faith. And I think the more that and prayer, and the longer that we're in it, the more dependent upon that faith and prayer that I become. And Rick can address that if he wants to, but it's really uncanny, the people, the friends that will send you a message and it's a biblical version, it's a verse, or the devotional that a friend in Georgia sent me, you know, a book one day and said, this is what you need. And isn't it amazing when you open it to the day, that is what you need for that day? So, you know, for me, my strength, my faith, my prayer has become much stronger just since August even.
That's very true. I tell people, I said, you know, God didn't say, I want you running. But I tell people, I said, there were certainly things that I tested God on before I made the decision about this, you know, these things need to happen and I need to feel comfortable in my heart that I'm making the right decision. He sure didn't tell me I was going to win. But, you know, but I know I'm doing God's will for my life. And I agree with Nita that my life, and particularly my spiritual life, has been substantially strengthened. I've matured as a Christian in the last 6 months as I've gone through this process. And I think about, you know, Joshua 1:9. Somebody asked, what's your favorite scripture? And I said, well, right now, favorite scripture is Joshua 1:9, where you know, he commanded us to be brave and to be courageous and not be afraid, because he will always be with us. And as we go through this process, and as you know, you kind of look around, and every now and then, you know, you look behind you in the parade that you thought you were leading, it might have thinned out a little bit. That's okay, because the one person you need to have in the parade with you is always there.
Another question?
My name's Grace Hales, and I have a question. When you had said in the past about the illegal aliens getting in-state tuition, my question is, why do you let them get in-state tuition for our schools, or, you know, the Texas schools especially, when there are other kids that are great kids in another state that might want to come to a Texas school that has to pay out-of-state tuition prices?
Right.
You know, I mean, I have a heart, and I understand it's good for them to go to school, but you know, that's a big money issue.
Here's the bigger issue, and I want to directly address what you've asked, but the bigger issue is that the federal government has just failed abysmally at securing our border.
Do you guys agree with that?
Yes.
The federal government's failure to secure the border is the reason that South Carolina passed an immigration law, that Arizona's passed one, that Alabama's passed one, that we've had to do the things in the state of Texas we were forced to do because of the federal government's absolute failure. We spend $400 million on border security in Texas to date. Just last month, I deployed 2 gunboats to the border with Mexico on major bodies of water, Lake Falcon and Lake Amistad. I mean, and these are 30-foot Kevlar impregnated hull boats. I mean, this is what you would expect to see in a war zone. But the fact is, there are places on that border it is a war zone, because our federal government, the president's pulled back even the National Guard troops that we had, and made the comment that the border's safer than it's ever been. He's so out of touch with the reality of what's going on the border. For 11 years, I've had to deal with this. So my point is, I know how to secure the border. And when I'm the President of the United States, there will be thousands of National Guard troops on that border. There will be strategic fencing in place. We will have aviation assets in the air 24/7 looking down, so that we know when activities occur on that border, whether it's drugs or weapons or illegal individuals crossing, we can send fast response teams and stop those activities. And we can shut that border down. It just takes a president with the commitment to do that. Let me address directly why Texas decided to do what they did on the immigration, with the education issue, because the federal government demands, and by law, that you have to take care of individuals who are in your state, regardless of their immigration status. So Texans were faced with this. You're either going to have a group of people that are tax wasters, are taxpayers. And they're there. And they're either going to be on your welfare rolls or in your prisons or engaged in activities that are going to cost the state. Or you're going to say, you're going to get in line and work towards getting your United States citizenship. And if you go to a Texas college, you are going to pay full in-state tuition. And of 181 members of our legislature, when that bill went through, there were only 4 dissenting votes. This was a straight-up economic issue for Texans. And look, I would never say that this is what you ought to do in South Carolina. I would never say that any other state, you should make that decision on your own. And I would never support it at the federal level. I'm not for amnesty in any form or fashion. To deal with that issue the way we did, I think made economic sense. And Texans still agree by and large that that was the best way to deal with it. And if you've lived in the state of Texas for 3 years, you pay that in-state tuition rate too.
We've got a young man who wants to ask a question. How old are you?
John.
Hi,
How old are you?
I'm 10.
10. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is John, and I'm 10 years old, and I've been following this race pretty closely. Now, describe what life will be like if you become president in 25 years for me and my kids.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
The crystal ball.
That's a great question.
Be careful, because he's not smiling.
Yeah. John, you'll be 35 years old, and I hope you will be smiling when you're 35 years old, because there was the generation before you that had the courage to make decisions that were hard decisions to reduce the size of government so that you could have more freedom. And I'm talking about freedom from over-taxation, freedom from over-regulation, freedom from over-litigation, and that we kept the freedoms that people who hate us would try to take away. And I refer to making sure that we keep a strong military to defend this country from those who hate us for whatever reason. And to do that, we must first have a strong economy. And our whole existence goes back to making sure that we have tax policy and regulatory policy in place that allow for the entrepreneurs to know that they can risk their capital and have a return on our investment. If we don't do that, then we cannot have the resources to keep up with the research and the development so that we can maintain a superior edge against countries like China. We cannot have the modern Navy that we're going to need or the modern forces that we're going to need to keep us free. So it all goes back to the economy. And John, my pledge to you is this. I'm not going to tell you that America is going to look like my home state, but those basic blueprint of economic prosperity that we put in place there, that inarguably, from my opinion, I believe this with all my heart. Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine, Site Selection magazine, CEO magazine, all pick Texas as the best economic climate in America. And it didn't happen by accident. We made hard decisions on tax policy, regulations that allowed that state to flourish, and it still flourishes today. We can do that in America, but we have to have the citizens really rise up and to say, we no longer are going to accept Washington, D.C. not listening to us about the taxes are too high, the regulations are too onerous, and we need a president who's an outsider, who has the courage to walk in there, and if an earmark bill comes to my desk, that little veto pen will come out, and you stop spending money that you don't have so your generation can have the freedoms that you deserve.
John, if I may, I just want to follow up a little bit on that, on why the governor and I decided to get into this race. Because we looked around and we have 2 children also. And so many of us grew up in the 50s and the 60s and remember those glorious days when you rode your bicycle, and the worst thing that would happen if you took the wrong turn and your neighbor was on the phone calling your mother and saying, John took the wrong turn on his bicycle coming home. I just want you to know. So, you know, that's what we want. When we looked around, we wanted, and as a mother, I want every young person that when they become your age at 35 to have the same opportunities that we had growing up, and also that we live safe. That as a mother and a future grandmother, no pressure, Griffin.
The pressure's on.
Yes. I want our world to be safe, and I'm not convinced that it's not safe now. I know what my husband can do in keeping us safe. So what we want for you is the safety and a job and a wonderful future and a safe environment and the healthiest environment that you can have to raise your children in.
So, it's so rare. How old are you?
28.
28. What do you want for your son 20 years from now?
I want him to be happy, and he's already that. He's found the most beautiful, smart, capable young lady to be his wife, and I don't know, 4 or 5 children.
She wants 3 boys and a girl.
But it's just, this is, and happiness comes in so many forms and fashions. But and I realize that money and the access of money is not going to bring you happiness. But the other side of that is if we live in a world where government continues to get bigger and bigger and our liberties become smaller and smaller. That wasn't the vision of our founding fathers, and I want to go back. And some people may think that's old-fashioned, but I want to go back to a reflection of those limited powers that our founding fathers had for the federal government. That the states, and that 10th Amendment, where we talk about the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited to it by the states or reserved for the states, respectively, or to the people. The simplicity of that 10th Amendment, and really let the states, and then people can kind of pick and choose. If you want to live in a state with high taxes or a heavy regulatory burden, or individual mandated insurance you got to buy, you can go live in Massachusetts. You can go live where the environment is more to your liking, and that's the beauty of our founding fathers, and that's the happiness, frankly, that I want for Americans, is to go find that place, go find that state that best reflects your values, and not live under this one-size-fits-all mentality that Washington seems to be trying to enforce upon all of us.
And the other thing, if I might add, the debt. I'm a nurse, and I've been in labor and delivery many times, and I have to tell you, I cried every time with the miracle of birth. Whether I was, it was a friend of mine that, we were a 30-bed hospital, or somebody that I didn't know, but the amount of debt that is going to be on these children, that is not right. We are not responsible if we leave that debt on their heads. And so that is something that, truly make a difference in Washington, so that they don't have, $46,000 of per child of debt now.
All right, let's take another question.
My name is Nora Brooks, and my husband and I have been blessed with 3 children. The Lord gave them to us to raise, and so with that being said, I wonder where you stand with the line between parental rights and the government telling us what we can do. And what would you do to protect our right in such decisions like schooling, discipline, religious freedom, nutrition, and those sorts of things?
The government's rights stop at your front door when it comes to dealing with your children. I am a very strong proponent of homeschooling. Tim Lambert, who is the head of the Texas homeschooling coalition, we get pointed out on a regular basis as being a state that has some of the best homeschooling environment. We protect the rights of the parents. We've gone to court to do that before. We've passed laws that in the state of Texas. And as a president, I would be promoting that same type of protection for whether you're homeschoolers or you're private schoolers or whatever it might be, because you know, parental rights are paramount, and unless there is clear evidence of abuse, then you know, it's not government's business what you and your children are doing, frankly.
You've talked about and you're very clear about what you don't want government to do. When you hear the Pledge of Allegiance, when you hear the Star-Spangled Banner or God Bless America, what goes through you personally?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it goes back to the way I was raised and the values that I learned in that little community of Paint Creek. My father was a B-17 tail gunner in 1944 and flew 35 missions. Her dad was a P-38 pilot in the Pacific and flew, I can't tell you how many hundreds of missions. And the love of America was instilled in us by our parents. Going off, well, at Paint Creek, my school board president was also my Sunday school superintendent, and he was also my scoutmaster. There was a lot of multitasking that went on in that little community. You know, my football coach was my track coach, and my basketball coach, and my civics teacher, and the principal of the high school, and drove the school bus. But he was also a Marine. And so the loving America, loving the values of this country were instilled in us at home and at school and at church and at Boy Scouts. And then when I went off to Texas A&M and volunteered to fly in the Air Force, I had the opportunity to live all over the world. And I never really left Texas, but maybe a handful of times my whole life. I had truly lived in a little bubble. And I didn't really know how other people lived. I didn't know how other governments treated their people until I lived in Saudi Arabia, until I lived in Iran, until I lived in all of these European countries and saw, you know, monarchies and theocracies and different types of dictatorships. And at that particular point in time, as a young 25, 26-year-old young man, it became so clear to me what an incredible country we live in, and the freedoms and what those people had taught me was so powerful. So when that flag goes up at a ball game, when we sing the words, they're really special. They're a powerful thing. When I'm standing on that stage, getting ready to debate, I'm standing at attention. And I'm standing with my hand over my heart to reflect my belief in what a great and incredible country we live in. Those symbols of this country should never, ever be used in any other way than to hold up America for the great freedoms and the hope for this world that it reflects.
Your faith and your commitment to traditional family values have been a big part of this campaign. Of course, America is filled with people of many faith systems and beliefs, and I'm curious what you have to say to them, to those who don't live like you, who are part of different kinds of families or have different belief systems.
Right.
How can you be a good president to them? What message do you have for them?
Yeah, I love them. And the fact is, my faith teaches me to love them, regardless of what their lifestyles are. It also teaches me to hate their sin. I mean, and that's and that goes to the issue of traditional marriage. And you know, there are some very good things and that come out of individuals who have that lifestyle. But my faith teaches me very clearly that act is an act of sin. So, but I love them. I mean, I would never not love them. I mean, that's the powerful message of my faith. But our founding fathers were wise in freedom of religion, not freedom from religion, but freedom of religion. So regardless of what your religion may be, you know, in America, no, you're going to be free to practice it. But this country was founded upon the Judeo-Christian values. And, you know, people can... People can argue that, you know, Jefferson was a deist, or, you know, and that's a fine argument. But the fact is, this country was based upon the Judeo-Christian values. And as we allow, whether it's political correctness or whether it's activists in robes that are on the Supreme Court, to chip away at those values, I think it hurts America's foundation. And as the President of the United States, you will see me put men and women on that court that are strict constructionists, but you'll also see me being very open to individuals who are different from me, but I'll always love them, but I will not compromise my principles from the standpoint of saying I have to accept something that you think is okay, but my values, and frankly, the voters in the states have said we're not going to accept as an act that goes against 3,000 years of tradition in this country and this world, for that matter.
All right, we have another question from a mom.
Hi, my name's Tara Haynes, and I'm from Conway, South Carolina. I'm also a Scout leader. I have a 17-year-old son who's an Eagle Scout, and I know that you are also. And I wanted to find out that I know that in the future coming up, he's going to hit a number of obstacles that he's going to come across just growing up in general. What obstacles did you come across after you've received your Eagle rank? And as president, how will you remove them?
Yeah. Here's a message for every young boy as they're working their way through scouting. I tell them this is the only thing you're going to do as a young person that'll be on your resume when you're 50 years old. and think about this. It's a really serious, I tell them, I said, this is serious stuff. And it's the reason you need to really work to get your Eagle. Because when a resume comes to my desk, and being the governor of my home state, I see lots of resumes. And when it says Eagle Scout, I know something about them without having never met them. I don't have to read the rest of the resume even. I know something about them as a young person, somewhere between the age of 12 and 17. They went through a long and laborious process. They followed a rule book. They followed a map, road map, to the completion of a long project. And that their mother probably spent a lot of time prodding them and poking them, isn't that right, Griffin? To finish this, because they understand something, that as an employer is making a decision about who they want to be on their team, and they see Eagle Scout, they know that that young person has some characteristics that were embedded in them as a young person. And if they had it between the ages of 12 and 17, chances are they still will have those characteristics at 35 or 45, or in my case, 61.
I know we're coming close to the end of this, and I want to give you an opportunity. And I don't know what direction you're going to take it, but there is a front runner now, and you will all be standing on the stage tonight, one candidate less. If there's a message that you'd like to send to the moms, and as you can see behind you, there's a row of TV cameras around here, so a lot more people are watching, that compares you and Governor Romney, and however you want to do it, what would you say to these people here and the people watching?
Governor Romney's a good man. We have gotten to know each other over the course of this campaign. We knew each other when we were governors. But Americans have a decision to make, and we're applying to work for you. We're applying to be the chief executive officer of this country. And I disagree with Rick Santorum. It is a CEO job. Yeah, it's commander-in-chief, but I've done them all. And as I asked you earlier, do you think changing an outsider, or excuse me, changing an insider with another insider, whether it's a Wall Street insider or whether it's a Washington insider, is really going to change Washington, D.C.? I'm the one person on that stage who is an outsider. I'm the one person on that stage who has a record of 11 years worth of operating a major entity and working in the same environment, basically, with Democrats and Republicans, and been successful at it. I'm the one individual who has been a consistent social and physical conservative for my entire life. And for that reason, I ask you to vote your values, vote who you think can best step into that role. And I cannot wait to get on the stage and draw that stark contrast between myself and my record and Barack Obama.
What would you like mom voters out there to know about your husband as a potential president?
I want them to know that we didn't take this decision lightly. We put ourselves out there for America to look and give a serious look at us. Two things that come to my mind: jobs. We need America back to work again, and we need a leader. And my husband is both a leader, as the longest serving governor in the state of Texas, and also he knows how to create that environment for jobs. We want the America again that we had growing up. And I just want everyone to really look at his record. Don't listen to the rhetoric, but like he said before, look at his record, and he can get America back.
And the cameras are going to want to focus on this, because I'm trying to read what your boots say. I'm into footwear, and I just want to I want you guys up here. Which is cooler? His boots or my shoes? Tell him what the boots say.
What does it say on the back here? 1824.
It says 1824 in the back, and the front of the boot says.
So this is I use these boots when I go to schools from time to time to teach history. And that flag on the front is the flag that was made from a wedding dress in 1835 in a little town called Gonzales, where the frontier and Mexican, the Mexican government had been rather unfair to Texans. And so they had loaned us a couple of little cannons to protect against raids from the Indians. And then they thought about it, and they said maybe giving those Texians those cannons wasn't such a great idea. And so they sent an envoy to ask for the cannons back. And the flag was made, and the little cannon, and come and take it. And so the first shots fired in the revolution that started Texas towards its independence as a republic was at Gonzales, and they tried to come take the cannons, and they were unsuccessful. And then the flag on the back is a Mexican tricolor with the date 1824 embroidered in the middle of it. That's the flag that was flying at the Alamo. And the reason 1824 was on there, because that was the date of the Constitution of which Texans were living under Mexican rule at that particular time. And they flew that over the Alamo to remind Santa Anna and his generals that, listen, we're in here because you all did not live up to your word on this Constitution. You know, the Alamo didn't turn out that well for us, but 6 weeks later at a place called San Jacinto, Sam Houston defeated Santa Anna, and the Republic of Texas was created. And it's thanks to people like William Barrett Travis and James Butler Bonham and a lot of folks from Tennessee and other states who came to fight for freedom. And it reminds me about service and sacrifice. And as I tell young people, I said, listen, I don't care whether you join the Peace Corps or the Marine Corps, but you need to give back to this country, because freedom's not free. And as we said earlier, we are only one generation away from losing our freedoms. And that, I will suggest to you, is the most important issue in this election that we're facing. History lesson for the day.
Yeah, unexpected history lesson here. Thank you both so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. It's great meeting you.
Now, we're going to be back here at 1 o'clock for you moms with a special message recorded just for you from Stephen Colbert. Do you have any